morning, friends, and happy Sunday. As you can see, we're doing things a little differently today. So Jen got stuck working. I know, super lame. We're all very upset with Jen for having to work and be an adult. But I didn't want to let the show go on without you guys. There was a lot of really, really big books that came out this week, so I definitely wanted to talk about those books that came out. So I'm doing something a little different. And I'm flying solo today. And if you can't tell, I am extremely nervous, okay? Listen, I've got the shakes, I've got the quakes. I don't know why, because I've been doing this for over a year, but I am so nervous to be flying solo today, but I couldn't leave you guys hanging. So I'm really excited to be here today. I hope you are equally as excited for me, for us all to be here today. Look, I'm already stumbling over words. Listen, I'm gonna let y'all in on a little secret, okay? So I always joke when I pop up on other people's channels, whether it's John's Comics with Kids or even on Greg's channel over at Beard Comic Bro. I get nervous when Jen's not around, okay? I always joke that Jen is like my emotional support human. I always need Jen with me. And when Jen isn't with me, usually I'm on my cell phone, like outside of the camera, like texting Jen, being like, Mom, come pick me up. I'm scared. So this is a new experience for all of us. So let's jump into it. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Sunday. It's time for me to do what Jen does and say good morning to some people in the chat. So, of course, our friend Travis, TM Nerdy, is in the chat first thing this morning. They are always on top of things, even before I can be. I'm going to say goodbye or good morning to Kaiser Jose. Thank you so much for being here. Jarrell, thank you so much. We have Super Stick Boy in the chat, y'all. Happy Sunday. Good morning to you. Niall, hello. Noggin Comics, good morning, everybody. And of course, Sheena in the chat. If y'all aren't following Sheena, she is the most amazing human being on this entire planet. I love her so much. She's just fantastic. We've got Scott in the comments. Hello, good morning, Scott. Yeah, Sheena, I agree. We miss Jen very, very much. Listen, I told her she should play hooky, but she didn't want to believe. So, let's see who else we have. Everybody saying hi. Oh, Sheena, my setup is looking proper. Listen, I feel like it's going to change. I just added all the Funkos last night, and I already hate it. So don't be surprised if this time next week everything's going to be reorganized all over again. But I'm very excited to see things come together and hopefully start filming some solo stuff soon. We have officially unofficial geek in the chat. Hi, good morning. There's so many of y'all here. Like, listen, y'all really want to sit here and listen to me ramble and give hot takes? Because, listen, it's going to be a spicy show today. We are definitely choosing violence on today's episode of Casually Comics. We have Stapled Spine Horror Zine. Hello. Good morning. Look, I said that right. I'm very proud of myself. I should get like extra stars on that one. Miss Rena, hi, hello. I am new here. I'm an indie comic creator myself. How are you doing? I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you are new or you've been here since the beginning or you've stepped in halfway through this wonderful journey, thank you so much. I was reading up on some stuff about podcasting where people think that even if you have followers that have been around for a year, 2 years, 3 years, you should always open up with an introduction and introduce yourself. So you know what? I'm going to try that today. So hi, I am Mars. I'm also known as That Comic Girl. I am one half. Listen, I'm the other stinky half. One half behind the Casually Comics duo that you are seeing here today. My other half, Jennifer, she could not be with us today because she is stuck working. But listen, she's definitely my other better half. She is wonderful. She's amazing. And of course, we are here to talk all things comics. So if you're new to the show, Casually Comics, we do reviews on all of the new releases this week. We also cover some comic news and just generally give some comic hot takes. And as Sheena has appropriately put in, we talk about slug butts. Yes, we talk about slug butts. Not so much lately, though. We haven't really talked about a lot of slug butts. Scott coming in. I just want to know who likes to smell my own farts. This is my main source for that information. Listen, Scott, you and me both. But we all know who the real we all know who the real fart smeller is, and that is Mark Millar himself. Listen, okay? I was at a little convention yesterday. Just a little convention. I didn't film anything because it was just a little one. It was like a little garage sale. It was in the center of a high school. And there was a Mark Millar box. And I was joking with my partner. I'm like, what if I just took a Sharpie out of my bag right now and just rewrote fart smeller box? And people would know what it means. It's fine. Noggin Comet says violence and hot takes. Great way to start the Sunday. Listen, I agree. There's so much out this week. There's so much to talk about this week that, like, I kind of feel bad talking about it without Jen, but I needed to get it off of my chest, okay? We got some other people in the chat. We got JG. Good morning. We have Comics King Brandon. Hey, hey. Scott, yes, also we cover on this channel. We have a Did They Boink segment. It's unofficial, but it is definitely official. Also, Sheena's right. We also talk about monster boinking as well. Good morning, Manic23. Hey, Mars and Comic Folk. Hi, hello. Thank you so much for being here, guys. You guys are wonderful. So let's talk about some comic news because there's some stuff that popped up this week. Not a whole lot, but a couple things I want to talk about. So the first one is there's been some like shakeups with like DC Comics and Image Comics in particular, in terms of the way that they are functioning and the way that their publicists and their creators are working. So as we all know, we went through a pandemic, kind of sucked. Everybody was forced to work from home. So Image started with saying that they are basically going full-blown remote. So they're no longer really having offices and they're no longer having like a one-stop place, which I know is in Portland. And everybody's just working from home. And listen, people want to work from home, let them work from home. I personally am a little sad because it means that I can't visit some of these places. Listen, I want to go visit Image Comics. I want to go and like talk to them about Saga and Lion Cat and all the other books that I love so much. But I mean, going to a remote thing, maybe it'll cut back on some of the expenses and put some more money into the, wallets of creators and editors and everybody else that works for Image. But DC Comics is following the same suit, it seems like. So there was a rumor that popped up last week that they were going down to a smaller space. So unlike Image, they weren't completely shutting down and not having like an office space. But DC Comics was going to be having a smaller space on the Warner Brothers lot somewhere where the majority of their staff, publicists, creators, editors, and the likes, they would be working remotely as well. It's just kind of interesting to me because I feel like people are more prone to like working from home. I mean, yeah, it sucks because you don't have this like really cool fancy studio space and you don't get to go and visit it. But I mean, hey, if it's what the people want, then we gotta give the people what they want. So it's not really huge, but I thought it was definitely something interesting. And I feel like a lot more publishers are going to be going to that kind of layout and style. It also kind of makes me think about internships and how internships are going to work, because Marvel in particular has a very big internship program and they're housed up in New York. And I actually know somebody who was an intern for Marvel, and I myself tried to become an intern for Marvel. And don't work out too much, probably because I was too busy bad-mouthing them for years before I actually read their comics. But it makes me wonder if they are going to be having more, remote work in the future and how that's going to go. In terms of other stuff with comics, a big announcement that I kind of want to talk about that was shadow dropped literally yesterday. Gail Simone is coming back to comics. Listen, y'all, Gail Simone is coming back to comics. And I'm really, really excited. Okay. So listen, Gail Simone, if you don't know who Gail Simone is, like, what are you doing? What are you doing reading comic books if you don't know who Gail Simone is? Gail Simone is probably like the most legendary female comic book writer on the planet. She really revolutionized the way comics work for women and female creators. And she's amazing. And we love her. However, she's been doing a lot of work recently. I believe it was at Lion Forge. She had a big role over at Lion Forge. So she wasn't really writing a whole lot in terms of indie books or Marvel or DC. And it felt like there was one point where she was on every single book. It really did feel like she was on every single book. Officially Unofficial Geek feels the same way I do, where she's screaming Gail Simone. So Gail Simone announced yesterday that she is going to be doing a book for Marvel Comics. I believe it's called Variants. Let me double check that because my brain's going into goldfish mode right now. It's called Variants, and it is going to be done with legendary artist Phil Noto, who I was actually talking about a couple weeks ago, I think last week actually, and how much I absolutely love Phil Noto's artwork. So they are teaming up on a book called Variants, and it is basically going to be about Jessica Jones and all of her different variations, which I kind of think is really interesting. I'm really excited to see this. I personally don't think that there is enough Jessica Jones love in the world right now, despite her having one of the best TV shows possibly to ever exist. I will fight you on this. It's fine. Um, but Gail Simone writing a Jessica Jones story makes me really, really excited because it felt like for years and years, the only person that was allowed to write Jessica Jones was Brian Michael Bendis. And I'm going to be honest, it was kind of boring. It was kind of poopy. It was kind of dumb. I hated it. Like, it was this weird crime thriller noir type book, and it was not fun. It was not fun. I didn't have a good time with it. However, Kelly Thompson took on the role, and Kelly Thompson it was like a 2-arc digital first only series for Comixology, and then they re-released it to print as Marvel does, in their cash grabs. But it was The Purple Daughter and Jessica Jones Blind Spot. And listen, once somebody else took over the mantle of Jessica Jones, it was really, really good. It was like the Jessica Jones that I had imagined from the TV show. She was spunky. She was kind of sassy, just hardcore badass. Absolutely loved her. So I think Gail Simone taking on that role and hopefully taking on that same sort of mantle could be very, very exciting. So we don't have a release date on that yet. I'm thinking it's going to be popping up in the next solicitations. But listen, man, Gail Simone's back. And that's all that matters. Gail Simone is back. And I love Gail Simone. So the last bit of news I wanted to talk about, it's not really news per se, more so a discussion. And maybe this is something really great, to have a great discussion on, and that is DC Comics and their current treatment of women right now. Because right now, their treatment of women, it's not great, guys. It's really not great. So, 2-ish years ago, right before we stepped into Infinite Frontier, we didn't see a whole lot of female-led books. I actually did a video on this. It's on my personal channel, That Comic Girl. Shameless, selfish plug there. But I basically did a video detailing the fact that we had gone down to having 2 female-led titles, and that we only had 3 or 4 female creators working on books between editing, colorist, covers, whatever. It was really frustrating. And then it felt like Infinite Frontier. We got to see Yara Flor. We got to see a female Aquaman. We got to see a non-binary Flash, which I know isn't necessarily female inclusiveness, but it's still inclusiveness and diversity. But it felt like we were kind of making a step towards the right direction. We were getting books like Nubia, books like Wonder Girl. We were getting Batgirls and other stories like that I was personally really, really excited for. And now it feels like we're kind of reverting back into that old state. I feel like we don't have as many female-led titles, any female solo titles. We definitely don't have that many female creators anymore, it feels like. And it feels like when we do have those female creators, aside from Mariko Tamaki, who's on Detective Comics right now, all of those female creators are shoehorned onto female-led titles. And don't get me wrong, I feel like females should be able to write female characters. And in fact, I feel like that should be your first choice when you come and pick a creative team. However, I want to see women write Batman more than just Detective Comics. I want to see a woman write Superman. I would love to see a woman write a Teen Titans lineup. I think that would be really, really cool. Not only that, but I feel like we just need more female creators right now. Joshua Williamson, who I feel like is on every book right now. He's on Batman. He's on he's on Robin. He's on a couple of the spinoffs right now. He's also writing Deathstroke Inc. And speaking of Deathstroke Inc., you have a character like Black Canary, who's I'm a little biased. You can see I'm a little biased. You have a character like Black Canary, who is probably one of the most badass and one of the most strongest female characters in the DC comic universe. She is shoehorned right now into a Deathstroke book, and she's not being utilized properly. Listen, they ain't even allowed to boink in that book. What's the point if they're not allowed to boink in that book? But she's shoehorned into a male's book. That's not Green Arrow, because I feel like when she was in the Green Arrow title, starting with Rebirth, that was done by Benjamin Percy and Otto Schmidt and Juan Ferreira, it felt almost like it was their book. It felt like it should have been renamed Green Arrow and Black Canary, because she was featured and prominent almost as much, if not more, than he was. And I just feel like she needs her own book. I feel like there's a lot of characters that need their own book. Let me know in the comments, because I see a lot of you popping up creators. I agree, Gail Simone for Batman. let me one up you on that. I would like Gail Simone for Batman, but I would also like Becky Cloonan on Batman. I think Becky Cloonan could write a really great Batman. Listen, if Becky Cloonan could write The Punisher, she can write Batman. Scott is saying bring back Devin Grayson. I agree. Devin Grayson did some really, really killer books like Gotham Knights, which was one of my favorite books when I first started getting into comics because it really got to introduce me to a lot of Gotham characters. You had characters like Huntress and Nightwing and Batgirl, and it was everybody. It wasn't just Batman. And that's, I think, why that book was really, really great. But yeah, Black Canary on Gail Simone on Black Canary. I'll take that too. I'll take everything. Let's just have Gail Simone on everything. If Josh Williamson can be on everything, I think Gail Simone can be on everything. So that's all that I have for news. I feel really awkward without Jen here. I feel like Jen would be kind of saying the same stuff. Jen would probably be saying that she wants like Stephanie Hands on Batwoman. Can we get a Batwoman book? We haven't seen Batwoman in a while. I know she's like in Detective Comics here and there right now, but can we get a Batwoman book? Please and thank you. But now's the part that you guys, I think, are all here for. And that's, we're going to talk about some comics. Listen, I feel like I read a lot. I read 13 books. And I read all 13 books this morning, because I procrastinated and realized last night getting into bed, I haven't read any of my comics. So I had to read them all this morning. So I have a lot of things to talk about. As always, we're going to throw it out to the chat. What do you want to see me talk about first? Do you want me to talk about indies? You want me to talk about DC? You want me to talk about Marvel? I will let you know that for the second week running, I have more Marvel books than I do DC books. I feel like I'm transforming into another person. It's insane. Stephanie Williams on Batwoman. I agree to that. Stephanie Phillips on a Green Arrow Black Canary book. Listen, now Scott, you're talking my language. Scott, you're speaking my language. Listen, I would kill for like a legitimate Green Arrow Black Canary book again. We had one in the early 2010s, I believe is when that came out, or like mid 2000s. That was a really good run. That was Judd Winnick and Cliff Chang. Listen, if y'all want some good content, read that run. Jarrell's coming in with indie. Scott's coming in with indie. I gotta give the people what they want, and we're gonna talk about indie books. I only have 4 indie books. 4.5. 4.5, that sounds right. 4.5 indie books. I know Jen would have way more. Jen would have the whole Scout Comics list, but we're going to try to go through it. So let's talk about indies. Let's talk about, because I read a lot of stuff digital this week. I've been cutting back on physicals. We're gonna start right off the bat with 7 Secrets. This is number 15. The past couple issues have been a little iffy on. I feel like I haven't been loving it as much as I do normally. This issue reminded me why I love this story. Again, Tom Taylor, Daniel DiNiccolo. If you're not reading this book, this was my favorite book to come out of 2020, mostly because it was the book that surprised me the most. I literally picked 7 Secrets up on a whim. Wasn't even really going to read it. I was like, oh, it's a new number 1. Let me pick it up. And then it became my favorite and I became obsessed with it. And I've been making everybody read it. I really, really liked this issue of 7 Secrets because it got back into those really hardcore character-driven moments. And I feel like that's what I like about Tom Taylor when he writes, is he does these really intense and sweet character moments. And unfortunately, I won't spoil it because if you are reading 7 Secrets, it's a huge spoiler, but there is a character that dies. And I feel like the character development that Tom Taylor and Daniel DiNiccolo gave this character is one of my favorites to come out of comics. Like, it is on the level of Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, if I can be so bold to say that. I love the way that this character came in. I love the way that this character developed. And I love the way that this character went out. And this book kind of ends on a cliffhanger that I don't even call it a cliffhanger because it feels very expected, but it feels earned as well. So 7 Secrets, I heard a rumor that there is only like 2 more issues left. I believe somebody said, and I think somebody said it here in the chat, that 7 Secrets is ending at 17 or 18. And if so, it's going to be very interesting to see how they wrap it up, because I feel like this book could have at least one more arc to it and then ending. I feel like right now we're right in the middle of an arc. We're learning new things right now. And I'm very curious to see how Tom Taylor and Daniel DiNiccolo are going to wrap it up. And I'm sad because it's one of my favorites. Remy Q Studios, I didn't say hi to you. Hi, hi, hi. Thank you for being here. Noggin Comics agrees. It was a pretty emotional issue. Like, listen, nothing will be as emotional as issue 2. I believe it was issue 2. That was the death of what is his name? Oh, it's of his father. His father dies in issue 2. Spoiler. Well, his father actually dies in issue 1, but issue 2 kind of gives you this back and forth between their relationship as father and son, and the relationship that they couldn't have. And it's really, really emotional. Also, speaking of Seven Secrets, because I wanted to bring this out, fun fact for y'all, because I'm crazy and I follow everybody on Twitter. Daniel DiNiccolo was talking about Seven Secrets, and was talking about the Batman because he had seen the Batman. I was talking about how Zoe Kravitz would literally be the perfect Eva, which is Caspar's mother. And listen, I have to agree. So listen, if y'all making a Seven Secrets movie, if you're making Seven Secrets animated, which I think would be even better given the art style, cast Zoe Kravitz. Better idea. Let's just cast Zoe Kravitz and everything. I think that's the better idea. Another book that came out this week was a little sequel book called We Live, Age of Palladians. We Live was a book that came out in I think that also came out in 2020. Maybe it came out in 2021, I'm not really sure, but it was a huge book from Aftershock Comics. Probably one of the biggest books that Aftershock has published. Went on to multiple printings. Everybody was trying to scoop it up. The way that We Live ends leaves off on like this huge cliffhanger for this open world. And for those of you that don't know, We Live it's a post-apocalyptic story that follows a bunch of children. Basically, we're told as a whole, as storytellers, story readers, the world is ending. The world has been going through apocalypse after apocalypse. There's been famine. There's been floods. There has been, what's the word I'm looking for? When things dry up. and it, I'm having a brain fart, goldfish brain here. But there's been any type of apocalypse you can imagine. It's happened. There have been monsters and creatures and animals that have mutated. There's been plagues. And at this point, humanity has survived long enough. They decide, okay, yeah, no, the world is just going to implode in X amount of days. Weird droughts. Thank you, Manic23. And thank you, Unofficial Geek, and everybody who has a brain this morning, because I don't. Why couldn't I think of the word drought? I don't know. So the world is going to end. Everybody's going to die. However, they want to be able to give people hope. And that is going to send these bracelets down to all of these children. And these bracelets will go on to these kids, and whoever it is that gets them, they are allowed one companion they can take to these kind of guide points, and they will be rescued, and they are basically going to be the next generation, and they're going to be saved. And it can only go on to children. So it's like this really intense emotional ride where, you follow this small group of characters. Some of these characters are dying. Some of these characters are going through things, with their loved ones. And it's one of my favorite books to come out of Aftershock. And in fact, it's one of my favorite post-apocalyptic stories. And the way that book ends, because I don't really want to I guess I feel like I have to spoil it if I'm talking about the sequel book, but this book transforms from a post-apocalyptic book into a superhero book. And you find out that all of these children that have been given bracelets are basically granted superhero powers, and it's really, really cool. So it opens up for this huge world, and We Live already was this huge expansive world, but to throw superheroes into the mix was really, really interesting. So I was really excited to see where that was going to go. And it had been almost a year before we got the sequel comic to We Live. And I personally was like, well, where is the sequel? Is it ever going to come? Is it going to be a matter of we're not going to get We Live, the sequel? And finally it was announced and finally it was released. And not very happy about it, you guys. Also, hi, Bobby. Bobby D. Legetto is here. Also, my mom apparently is in the chat. I missed her comment. My dad's been texting me, which I think is really funny. So if my mom is listening, hi, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. Pretty awesome of my mom to show up. So, Super Stick Boy, We Live came in last week. Not enough orders. My comic shop only ordered the black because they did not realize it was two different issues. They should have made that more clear. So yeah, I was actually going to get to that. So thank you, Super Stick Boy, for giving me a really great segue, because I had a very similar experience when I went into my comic shop, and there is We Live Age of Palladians Black and We Live Age of Palladians White. And listen, it honestly looks like a variant cover. It's very weird. It's very misleading. And I personally got in because, my shop, they didn't order enough. It's the same deal where they didn't order enough, and somebody had it, and we realized that they were two different they were two different books. They weren't even covers. They were two different books. We Live Black and We Live White, two totally different books. We're basically playing Pokemon at this point, guys. It's very, very weird. So it sucks because I was only able to get my hands on We Live White. I wasn't able to get my hands on We Live Black. And I'm not going to lie, I feel like I'm missing a lot, because We Live White, which to my understanding, that's the one you're supposed to read first. And if so, it's not very good, because We Live Age of Palladians picks up 6 years after the initial book came out, or initial book ended. And I thought we were going to get to see more of Hodo and Tala. I felt like, okay, your little brother is now a big brother and a superhero. And it's I feel like there could have been a lot of really great character moments between these two characters, because it literally goes from I'm your big sister, you're my little brother, I have to protect you, to you're my little brother, but now you're my little big brother, and now you have to protect me. And you spent a lot of time like world building, but not in a fun way, because We Live, the initial release, was very bright, very colorful. You had these really great landscapes, and there were these really cool, colorful creatures and monsters. Whereas it feels like in We Live Age of Palladians, everything is very bland. It's very grayscale. It's very black and white, if you will, pun intended. And it's not fun. You really don't get to see Hodo and Tala until the end of the book. And at that point, 6 years has gone by, so they almost seem like they're the same age now. I think it would have been way more interesting to see Tala, still a young girl, now still trying to protect her older brother, and instead we're doing a giant time skip. Listen, I'm going to be honest with y'all. Time skips is my least favorite trope in comics. I cannot stand time skips, because to me, a time skip is lazy writing. To me, a time skip is you can't fill in the points between A and B, so we're just going to skip it. And we're going to see where it goes from there. We're going to see where it lands, if you will. Now, I was able to read some of the preview pages of We Live Black, and it feels like that kind of gives me what I was looking for. There were some more Hodo Tala moments, but I feel like it's very bold and very ballsy of an indie comic that's not Image. If this was Image, I could kind of understand more, because they're the third biggest publisher. But for Aftershock to do this is very, very strange and very, very risky. Not only that, but we covered last week, Aftershock came out and was complaining that shops didn't order enough of their books. And maybe it is like a case with, I believe it was Super Stick Boy, where it was his shop ordered, and same with my shop. They ordered a bunch of what they thought was cover A, but not a bunch of what they believed was cover B. And if you look at solicitations, it's really hard to determine that these are two different books. Doesn't matter if they're from two different perspectives. But, because Bobby points in, I believe it's the same story, but from two different points of view, which very well could be. But if this wasn't conveyed that these are two separate books that need to be read together, obviously shops aren't going to order enough. So I just feel like We Live Age of Palladians was a huge, huge miss. I think they were banking on it being as successful as We Live, the initial story. But let's be honest, the only reason why that book was as successful as it was is because shops didn't order enough of it. People read it, realized how good it was, talked it up, inflated the market. So, of course, it went to multiple printings. That being said, I'm not trying to invalidate the goodness of the story because, again, We Live was probably one of my favorite books to come out of that year and definitely one of my favorite post-apocalyptic books and by far one of my favorite Aftershock books. But y'all needed to do better on this. So I don't know if going forward, We Live Age of Palladians is going to be doing this, issue 1 of black, issue 1 of white, or issue 2 of black and issue 2 of white, or they're going to alternate kind of like an X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine, because that's how this feels. But if they do, it's going to be a mess. And these books, I believe, at least issue 1, they were $4.99 a pop. That's a lot of money. A lot of people are going to be wanting to wait for the trade. So, I don't know. That was We Live, Age of Palladians. Another title that came out this week was Hit Me #1. Hit Me #1 is from Aftershock Comics. I'm really sad to be talking about this book because this feels like a Jen book. I really hope Jen liked this book because I really like this book, aside from a very small point that I will bring up that I don't want to bring up, but it needs to be talked about. So Hit Me #1, sorry, goldfish brain. Hit Me #1 is a new title from Aftershock Comics, or I'm sorry, not Aftershock, AWA Upshot Comics, who did other books that we really, really love, like Not All Robots. They also did Hotel, which has been one of me and Jen's favorite titles recently. Also, my friend Greg, aka Bearded Comic Bros, in the chat. Hi, friend. Hello. Thanks for joining us. But Hit Me #1 from AWA Upshot is written by the same individual who did Bad Mother. I am completely blanking on the name right now, but I know that they did Bad Mother. And it follows the story of this sex worker who she calls herself a personal pain slut. And she basically is hired by men to be beaten and abused and sexually used. And I think that that's really interesting as a main character because we get this really interesting monologue from her about her talking about her job as she's looking in the mirror at herself. It's a flat rate if they want to hit me somewhere where I can cover up anywhere on my body, but if they want to hit me in my face or they want to hit me on my hands or somewhere I can't cover up, then it's more money. And I'm like, damn, this girl hardcore. I think I want to be friends with her. And it's really, really interesting to me because I feel like the last book about sex workers that we got, and they aren't even technically sex workers, was Money Shot from Volt Comics. And me and Jen have talked about it on this channel before that sex work is real work. And sometimes it's harder work than actual work because of the things that these men and women and non-binary individuals have to go through. And listen, we applaud you for that. There was also another book from Image Comics called SFSX, which actually that might be a closer iteration to Hit Me than Money Shot. So yeah, if you want a double feature, read SFSX by Image Comics because it's a really great book and one of our favorites. So this individual, she is, like I said, a personal pain slut. She has a bodyguard. They have a really, cute, I think kind of cute relationship because, he has a crush on her, but she's like, I don't get attached to people and he does. So we're going to stay apart. And she goes to meet a client basically. And, it's a client thing gone bad where the client dies and she's stuck with all these diamonds. And then it's up to her and her little bodyguard to figure out, what's going on. And it's basically like, I don't want to say a boring whodunit thriller mystery type thing, but that's what it is. But you're throwing in that element of our main character being this badass sex worker. And suddenly I'm interested. Suddenly I'm invested. Manic 23 coming in with SFSX as well. Yes, please read that book. It's only $10 for volume 1. You have no excuse not to read that book. It's a very, very good book. But suddenly I'm interested with this, introduction of this main character who is so different from any other character we've seen in comics before. The only thing that I don't like about Hit Me is at one point a slur is used, and it's a slur towards Asian individuals. And it was a point that made me kind of go, and I put it down and, quickly Googled and found out that the writer is a white woman. It is a white woman who's writing Hit Me. And I, unless it's like historical, and even so, I'm kind of iffy on that. Unless it's historical, there's really not a reason to use slurs in your books. I don't care who they're towards. I don't care if it's in favor of or reclaiming the word, or don't use slurs, please. Like, that panel alone almost made me not want to continue to read this book, because it made me so upset, and it comes out of nowhere. I mean, maybe it doesn't come out of nowhere because the character that says it, it's a mob boss, kind of a creep, kind of a douchebag. But did you really lose anything? Or would you lose anything if you did not include that word? If you just called the guy a pussy, because it's in reference to her little puppy dog bodyguard. If you call the guy a pussy, it would honestly have the same effect, but it wouldn't be as offensive. So, I don't know. Not how I feel about it. I do think it's very good. I think it's one of the better titles that AWA has published. Will I be reading issue 2? Probably. Am I still upset that slurs were used? Yes. Creating Comics While Black says, it still bothers me Chris Claremont used a racial slur in his X-Men era. That is very interesting to me. I've talked on the show before that I'm the fake X-Men fan. I like X characters and I love characters, but I've never really read a ton of X-Men stuff. And I've definitely not read a lot of older X-Men stuff, including stuff from the Chris Claremont era, which is known to be like the most iconic. It's what made X-Men what they are. So that's kind of interesting to me. Thank you so much for sharing that. Please, if you have any other fun facts, please let me know, because I love hearing, I don't love hearing stuff like that, but I love knowing information like that. But that's definitely interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. So I have one more indie title, and it was my favorite. I think I'm gonna be bold and say it was my favorite read of the week. So from Image Comics, because there wasn't a lot from Image this week. From Image Comics, we got the debut of Little Monsters #1. This is a new title from Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. And if you don't know, Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen have teamed up once before on a little title called Descender and Ascender. And I'm gonna be honest, I read a little bit of Descender, wasn't a fan of Descender, but Little Monsters, that's a good book, y'all. This is the type of Jeff Lemire stuff that I really, really like. So Little Monsters follows the story of a group of children who are vampires. And it's as simple as that. Listen, I love vampires. I'm a vampire girl. I grew up in that emo age, Twilight, all that jam. Listen, I love vampires. I watched Interview with the Vampire last night, okay? So maybe I'm just in the mood for vampires. Maybe this set the tone for me. But it felt like a really good companion piece to Interview with a Vampire. So if you want a double feature, watch Interview with a Vampire and then read Little Monsters. But Little Monsters, like I said, follows the story of about 5 or 6 children who are all vampires. And they're like in this little town and they can't leave. And it's like really strange because I can't tell what era this is set in. I want to say that it's in modern times because there's a young boy with an acoustic guitar, and obviously acoustic guitars didn't exist. Well, maybe they did. I'm not the expert, but I don't think acoustic guitars, lasted way back when, and they're wearing modern clothes. But it's also very possible that this is in the future because there's a moment at the end where it almost makes me think that it's kind of post-apocalyptic. Anyway, these children, they're basically left to their own devices. They were told by what I'm assuming is like their maker, that they have to stay here, that he'll be back, and then they'll do, I guess, whatever it is that vampires do, which I'm assuming is eat people. However, we learned from one of the characters that it's been almost or over 100 years since that person has returned. And of course, some of the kids are getting a little angsty. They want to see what's going on. They want to go out and see the real world because it feels like they're doing the same thing day in and day out. It's just really, really interesting to me. I really like seeing how these kids interact. And while we didn't see a whole lot of that with issue 1, because I feel like issue 1 was a very, very quick read. And I appreciated that personally. I feel like it was a very, very quick read. You got the gist of a lot of these characters' personalities. I'm really excited to see more of how these characters are going to interact with each other. If I'm being quite honest, it reminds me a lot of Plutona, which is another Jeff Lemire book following a group of younger kids where they find a dead superhero in the woods. If you haven't read Plutona, please, 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 please read Plutona. But I agree with Bobby on this one. I really, really love the artwork from Dustin Nguyen. Listen, Dustin Nguyen is one of the most interesting artists that I think we have in comics. I absolutely adore his work on, Heart of Hush. I loved his work. Even though I didn't enjoy the book, I love the artwork in Descender. And he just has a really, really unique style. And when he was initially announced on this book, I don't want to say a little disappointed, but I couldn't see, because I feel like Dustin Nguyen, while his style is gorgeous and he usually goes with these really great watercolor drawings and images, I couldn't see it translating very well to a vampire story, where oftentimes we think vampire stories are very goth, very beautiful, very elegant. But it does phenomenal. Like, I absolutely love the artwork on Little Monsters. You get these moments where you can tell that there's some like digital work that's put into this on top of his watercolors. It almost feels like Liechtenstein paintings with like the pop art, and we get the half tones and the grid tones, and I think it lends itself to a really great third dimension to the book. But not only that, but I think the idea of having Dustin Nguyen on this book, having this book be primarily in black and white, is really, really interesting because they're vampires. They can't be outdoor in the day. So in a normal book done by maybe a more traditional artist, you'd get a very dark and muddy book. Whereas with Little Monsters, with Dustin Nguyen doing the art and doing this very black and white monotone, watercolor style with little flicks of red here and there, I felt like I was in the daytime. And I thought it was really, really interesting because it almost felt like I was seeing the world as these vampire children see it. And then when we see, over yonder, the hill, the sun is coming up, even though it was in black and white, even though I felt like I was already in daylight, I still felt like I could see the sun rising. So I really, really like Little Monsters. If you are not reading Little Monsters, if you did not pick it up, please, please, please pick it up. Willis Henry agrees. He's heard it's a very, very good read. Noggin Comics, love Little Monsters. Curious to see where it goes. I'm also curious. I can't remember if this is supposed to be a mini series or if it is an ongoing. Somebody definitely let me know, because I would read a million issues of this series. I also want to say good morning to James Phelps. Always nice to see you on a Sunday morning. Thank you so much for being here. I'm flying solo today. It is very nerve-wracking. Also, Azorius Tiger Comics is here in the chat. Good morning to you, my friend. How are y'all doing? Give me a little break. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me what you're reading. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me how off I'm doing, since I don't have Jen here. And I know you guys sit here and watch for Jen. So this is nerve-wracking if you've never done it by yourself. With Jen, with somebody else, it's great. By yourself, a little nervous. All right, let's move on. I think we should save Marvel for last. There was a lot of stuff that came out from Marvel. I have a lot of feelings on a lot of Marvel comics. And it's best to keep y'all waiting. So I'm going to, James says, thank you. Thank you so much. Kicking ass as usual. Kicking ass, taking names. It's what I do. Jarrell also coming through saying, I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all so much. Noggin Comics, you're wonderful. Azorius Tigers coming in, reading X Lives, Wolverine, X Deaths of Wolverine. Listen, I tried to keep up with that. And then I moved. And then I realized I can't keep up with a weekly double series. It's literally impossible. Stapled Spine, Harzine, coming in with Manor Black. I'm actually not familiar with Manor Black. Tell me more. Noctera. I need to pick up the first trade of that. I wasn't crazy about the first issue, but it's enough to make me want to read the trade. And She-Hulk was great recently. I agree 100%. It was wonderful. Eddie Rutter. Hi, hello. Thank you for being here. Bobby, thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. I'm glad you're enjoying hearing me rant and ramble and all that stuff. And thank you, Azorius, as always. Got to come through with that swag. It's also very cold in my studio because our sun faces that way and not this way. So this room tends to get a little colder. So I got to bundle up. So let's talk about DC, because there was 3 books from DC that I read this week. One of which I didn't think I was going to read, and read it and kind of enjoyed it. So we'll save that one for last, because why not? First one we'll talk about, because of course, it's not me talking about stuff if I'm not talking about Tom Taylor. We saw the finale of the 2-part crossover featuring Nightwing with Superman Son of Kal-El number 9. Listen, first of all, we're just going to talk about, because 2-part crossover, jumping from one series to another, I love that. That's my jam. If we could get crossovers keeping like that, because I remember back in pre-New 52, we saw Green Lantern and Green Arrow did that, where it was like 2 issues here and 2 issues there. I believe Batman did it at one point. We need to do more of that. I really like these one-on, one-offs, because I can keep up with it, basically. That's all I'm saying, is I can keep up with it, and that's what's most important. Superman Son of Kal-El, I think this was my favorite issue yet. So I've been loving Superman Son of Kal-El. I absolutely love this take that Tom Taylor is doing on the character. It really does feel like he took Jonathan Kent and reinvented him, because he felt like a very much just their character. He was really great when he bounced off of Damian Wayne, but in terms of standing as a character on his own, he wasn't doing too hot. Tom Taylor swooped in, Bruno Redondo, the whole team. That John Timms, I believe, was on Superman Son of Kal-El. Bruno Redondo is only on this issue. But the two of them swept in, created this whole new character that honestly feels more impactful and more interesting than the Man of Steel himself. So I'm really happy about that. But in this particular issue, it's just a really fun buddy team up between Nightwing and Superman. And it's really fun. And I really like the dynamic between these two characters. Listen, I thought that the dynamic between Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent was my favorite, because it felt like baby versions of Batman and Superman. But then I realized I see that already with Batman and Superman. However, when you take a character like Nightwing and a character like Jonathan Kent, both of them are two very bubbly, very friendly personalities, and you throw them together, it just kind of ends in like a smug friend fest. And I really, really like that. I really love that there were some intimate moments between Nightwing and Superman where, Superman, he ain't doing too hot. Like, listen, he's getting people killed. Things are happening. He feels like he's not living up to his father and his mother's expectations. And of course, you have Dick Grayson coming in, swooping in, saving the day, and being like, kid, you're doing the best that you can. You're doing better than you can. That's all you have to do. And it really is this like tender big brother, little brother moment between the two, and they're talking and they're having a good time. And, we get this really cute moment between Nightwing and Lois Lane. And listen, just throw Nightwing into every book at this point in time. Especially if Nightwing is written by Tom Taylor, if you're not reading this, what are you doing with your life? If you're not reading Nightwing, what are you doing with your life? Please read Nightwing. Also, my boy John's Comics with Kids here in the house. # hear me out. I'm here for you, Mars. You're late, pal, but it's okay. I'll forgive you. Thank you so much for being here, as always. That was probably my second favorite book of the week. That book, Superman Son of Kal-El, number 9. It was one of those books that just, I was smiling from ear to ear the whole way through it. I really, really loved it. John says Superman Son of Kal-El is my read of the week. Listen, it would have been, but you missed it. Little Monsters from Jeff Lemire and Dustin Wynn, published by Image Comics, new this week. That was my number 1. This is a very, very, very close second. And actually, it probably could be interchangeable depending on my mood. If I hadn't watched Interview with the Vampire last night, Superman Son of Kal-El probably would have been number 1, but I'm in a vampire mood right now. This week from DC Comics, we saw the start of Trial of the Amazons, and I'm done. I'm so over. It just started, and I want it to stop. I did not have a fun time with Trial of the Amazons. I'm gonna be honest. I felt very, very lost. You know how I just talked about with a little book called Superman Son of Kal-El, number 9, and a little 2-part crossover with another book called Nightwing, and I said that was the perfect way to do crossovers, is do these little bite-sized team-ups. Trial of the Amazons is doing the complete opposite, because they are doing a 2-part story of Trial of the Amazons. They're sprinkling one-shots throughout everywhere. They're continuing things in the actual Wonder Woman tie-in line. They're also continuing things in the Nubia storyline, which was supposed to be a limited series. Honestly, at this point, I'm convinced that the whole Trial of the Amazons event is the reason why the entire Yara Flor Wonder Girl series was as messy as it was, because it feels like everything that they've done has been building up to this Trial of the Amazons moment. And it feels like maybe there was a lot of rewrites along the way and a lot of things that have changed along the way. And it was just messy and I didn't care for it. So Trial of the Amazons, we're following Nubia, we're following Hippolyta now that she's away from the Justice League, because for those of you that didn't know, Hippolyta has been teaming up with the Justice League for the past year or so. Wonder Woman's been off doing her own thing. Yara Flor, of course, has been badass the whole time. She shows up at one point. But it's basically multiple Amazon tribes that are coming together and they're fighting. For what reason? I really don't know. I think they're fighting because they want to decide who's Queen of the Amazons right now, even though I thought Nubia was Queen of the Amazons, because Hippolyta, who was Queen of the Amazons, who decided to join the Justice League, decided to give the title to Nubia. And even Wonder Woman said that Nubia was the true ruler of Amazon or Amazonia or Themyscira, or whatever the hell we're calling it. And Creating Comics While Black literally hit that on the head and said it sounds like another DC cash grab. And you, my friend, are very, very white. Right. Officially Unofficial Geek coming in with the actual brain is if it's a contest to be the keeper of Doom's doorway. So you have to have a whole contest for that, because I'm gonna be honest, being the keeper of Doom's doorway does not sound very fun. And it's just it's a mess. Banshee Queen, hi, hello. You've been in here subtly, and I appreciate you. Says at least the covers of Trials of Amazons are pretty though, and I agree. They are very pretty. We got some very pretty ones by Jen Bartel. But it's too much. Willis Henry agree. Too much to keep up with. The storyline is all over. I agree 100%. The storyline for this is all over. It's very, very dense. There's a lot of things that are being talked about that don't make sense. It feels like it's simultaneously punishing you for not reading Wonder Woman, Wonder Girl, and Nubia, Queen of the Amazons, while also trying to keep you up to speed on that. And it doesn't make any sense, because on one side, they're giving me pages of dialogue and trying to fill in the information. But then on the next page or the next 2 pages over, I'm completely lost and I don't know what you're talking about. And I see little asterisks that are like, well, you should have read Wonder Woman number, 154. You should have read Nubia, Queen of the Amazons number 3. And I'm like, so what is the truth? What are you asking from me at this point? Yara Flor shows up for a total of 2 pages, and it's probably some of the best Yara Flor dialogue that we've seen since she debuted in Wonder Girl. I'm really upset that we didn't get to see more Yara Flor. However, I need to have a discussion because I'm very upset. And I agree, Jarrell, why can't DC ever get the Amazons right? Did they learn nothing from Amazon's attack? Which, if you were around when that came out, I wasn't, but I went back and read it. It's probably one of the worst events DC has ever had. Please don't read it. Save yourself the suffering. But there's a moment in this book, and like there's moments of brilliance in Trial of the Amazons. I really like seeing Themyscira and being able to explore the politics of Themyscira and being able to see it develop and have its own culture and its own people. I love seeing these characters like Atlana, and I like seeing Nubia, and I love seeing Philippa. And speaking of Philippa, there's a very cute, tender, gay moment between Hippolyta and between Philippa. And listen, this is content I've been craving for literal years. Is confirmation that they're gay. We get an on-panel kiss. And then, at the very end of the book, we have to play the bury your gays trope. And Hippolyta is she's dead. I don't think she's actually dead, but that's how they cliffhanger it, is, somebody's killed Hippolyta. And they also cliffhanger it that somebody kills possibly Philippa. And I'm just over it. Like, listen, just let women be happy. Let women be happy with each other. Officially Unofficial Geek says, I want to talk to who runs the joint. I agree, because I feel like Becky Cloonan, who is spearheading everything with, I feel like the Wonder Women right now. It feels like she's the ringleader, and then you have other people that are writing other Wonder titles, but it all leads back to Becky Cloonan. I feel like she has ideas and wants to take these characters somewhere, but then DC comes in and it's like, no, we got to do an event. No, we got to do that. No, we got to do this. And it was not, I was looking forward to Trial of the Amazons slightly. I'm gonna be honest. And the reason I was looking forward to Trial of the Amazons is because I wanted to see Yara Flor. I got to see her for 2 pages, which was also really weird because I can't think of who is doing the art on Trial of the Amazons, but there is a 2-page like spread where Joelle Jones is doing the art, and it's only the art when Yara Flor comes in, and it's really, really weird. And Yara Flor said, "Who runs this joint?" I think that does encompass the whole thing. That does encompass the Amazons. Unfortunately, because it's the only way that I can be connected to Yara Flor, am I going to complain about it the whole time? Yes. Manic 23. All of these are the reasons I read indie. Listen, I'm right there with you. But I feel like even some of the indie books recently have been a little disappointing. So that was Trial of the Amazons. I had planned, I had scripted a whole 30-minute rant on Trial of the Amazons, but I have another book that I'm going to rant about, so I'll save that for later. A book that I did read this week, though, that I really, really liked, and officially unofficial geek, reading my mind. Did I read Nubia? Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at 2 different names. I'm looking at Naomi and Nubia at the same time. I read the first 2 issues of Nubia, but I stopped and decided to trade weight it. However, it sounds like Nubia is like the way to go right now because there's a Medusa redemption that I didn't know about that was thrown into Trial of the Amazons, and I need to definitely read more Nubia. Banshee Queen says we need more Yara and DCs. You can only get a little bit, and that's it. You get a little sprinkle of Yara, and that's it. We need more Yara Flor. She agrees with me. She's up there. She agrees. We need more Yara Flor. But speaking of the last book I read this week, because I'm confusing my end names, Naomi, season 2, number 1 came out, and I'm going to preface this right now. I don't know anything about Naomi. I did not read the first iteration of Naomi. I'm not watching Naomi on the CW. I know that Naomi was like one of the biggest things DC had ever done when she first debuted, but I had never had a chance to read her, and I decided, hey, it's in your number 1. Let me read it. I was actually pretty interested in this character. I think I really, really like Naomi. So I know from seeing her on covers and solicitations that Naomi was with Young Justice, I think. She was teaming up with Young Justice and Teen Titans. Then she ran off and joined the Justice League, which personally I think is a little strange and a little odd because I feel like her being a teenager, she should be with the Teen Titans. She should be with Titans, somebody more of her age group, instead of running around with a bunch of adults who are probably have shitty moral values. But she was with the Justice League, and now she's back, and she's trying to return to normal, and she's going back to high school, or trying to go back to high school, and trying to basically resume normal life again. And I really like this character, man. She's a good character. She's really headstrong. She's got really great moral values. In some ways, she reminds me a little bit, not quite, of Kamala Khan over at Marvel, Little Miss Marvel. And I really, really like this character. So I think I want to go back and read the initial Naomi miniseries so that way I can be introduced to her a little bit more. I'm not a fan of Brian Michael Bendis, but this was really, really great. I really, really enjoyed it. I also absolutely love the artwork from, I believe it's Jamal Campbell who's doing the artwork. And Jamal Campbell did the artwork for Far Sector, which was another really, really great book from DC. And listen, Jamal Campbell needs to be on more books because their artwork is absolutely gorgeous. I was like stunned at every single page, and I want more. There was a reason she needed to be in the Justice League, and that was to help them go after the people that killed her biological parents. Oh, but couldn't she have technically done that with the Teen Titans? Did it have to be the Justice League? I don't know. I just think it's weird when small children run around with adults, and I feel like if she was with the Teen Titans, then she could have more friends. But maybe that's just me being a crotchety old comic book reader. It's like, no, my child character can't be with the adults; they have to be with the children. I don't know. I just think it could have been more fun. Maybe I should just read Justice League before I start talking about stuff. But Naomi season 2 was pretty good. I think that you could definitely read it without reading Naomi, season 1 or volume 1 or whatever you want to call it, because I hadn't read Naomi volume 1 and I still fell in love with the character in volume 2, and I was kind of they do a really good job at, telling you that her biological parents died and that she was adopted and now she's got all these powers. So if you're interested in the character, pick it up. I think this is a really, really great book for younger readers, definitely like teenagers. I'm actually surprised that this is an ongoing and not a like DC young adult original graphic novel, which I champion because there's some of the best content that we've been getting from DC. But it's a really, really good book. I really, really liked it. Justice League stuff recently has stunk like bad cheese lately. Do you know why that is? It's because Brian Michael Bendis is writing it. And Brian Michael Bendis is not fun. So, yeah, that is everything for DC. Sleepy Reader 666 says, good morning. Good morning to you, my friend. Glad to have you. I'm doing it solo today, so I hope everybody's having fun because I'm having fun. Not as fun as I would if Jenna were here, but I'm having fun. So let's hop over to the other side. Let's talk about Marvel, because there was a lot of books that came out of Marvel this week. A lot of number ones. Like there were 5-ish number ones, 4-ish. So let's do that. Okay. So let's talk about Marvel. Officially unofficial geek coming through with Punisher. All right, you know what? We're gonna talk about the Punisher. We'll talk about the Punisher. All right, so Punisher, new number 1, new symbol. We're doing away with skull and crossbones. I mean, we've got now this like weird Japanese ninja inspired little logo, which I think actually looks kind of neat. I don't think it fits for the character, but I think it's actually kind of neat. I'm gonna preface things here. I've never read the Punisher. Okay, so I've read Punisher. I don't really know a lot about the Punisher other than, what happens in season 2 of Daredevil and what happens in episode 1 of Punisher, because that's about as far as I got through. I have read one Punisher book in my entire life, and it's one of my favorite books ever. It's a little book written by Frank Thierry called Space Punisher. Listen, if y'all have never read Space Punisher, I'm going to need y'all to just jump off stream, head on over to Marvel Unlimited, because I'm pretty sure it's on the app, and read Space Punisher, okay? Space Punisher is exactly what it fucking sounds like. It is this pulpy iteration of the Punisher in space. He has this really nasty 90s-esque rat tail ponytail. He also has... It's just really weird and really bizarre. And it's the Punisher in space, y'all. I need you guys to read Space Punisher, okay? Because it's the best thing you're ever going to read. Now, in for the verdict. If I did not like Punisher, it will break your heart. I didn't mind Punisher. Let's go with that. I didn't love it because it wasn't like oh yeah, this was so great. This was the best Punisher I've ever read. But it was pretty good. It was pretty okay. I would give it like a solid like B+. B- maybe. I would give it like a B+. I think if you like the character, because I'm not, again, we've established I'm not a big fan of the Punisher. My rule with Punisher is I've seen, I've read Space Punisher. That's about it. That's my experience with the Punisher. But it wasn't bad. As somebody who was new to the character, doesn't know a whole lot, I think it did a really good job of picking things up. I think the art was really, really great. I can't think of who it was by. It almost reminded me of the same creative team from Jessica Jones Blind Spot, so it might have been that person. But Punisher, this iteration of Punisher was pretty decent. It was pretty great. I will say this: there is a page I believe it's like page 3. I was going to post it on my Twitter this morning, but I haven't had a chance to. There is a page 3, because the first 3 pages of this new Punisher run is kind of introducing you to the Punisher, for those of you that haven't read it. It's, telling you that, his wife died, his children died, and then it gives you this big splash page where it's like, he is the Punisher. And it gives you all of these iconic moments of the Punisher. And we've seen stuff like this happen before, and I really like pages like this. And usually the artist does a really, really good job, tying together all of these iconic moments. For example, we saw it last week with Devil's Reign X-Men #1, or X-Men #2, where Emma Frost touches Peter Parker and she sees all of these iconic moments that Spider-Man's gone through. However, in Punisher #1, instead we get a double splash page where it is literally a collage, like somebody did it in Microsoft Paint, where they just cut copies of, iconic moments in a comic book and just put them on a page. And I thought it was very, very funny. And I thought it was very, very immature. And I'm not going to lie, it took me out of the book hardcore. Hardcore, that panel hits, I'm immediately drawn out of the book and I'm like, what the hell am I reading? Because the artwork in this book is phenomenal. We get to some of these really, really great action sequences and it's really interesting. And then you have this fucking copy, cut, paste collage done in Microsoft Paint that is supposed to be showcasing me iconic Punisher moments. And I'm not invested. In fact, I'm laughing. And it's just very, very weird and bizarre. That being said, this version of the Punisher, he finds himself in, I believe, Japan, because I'm not the Marvel pro, but he's working with the Hand right now. And the first couple pages, we see the Punisher with a katana. And at first, unofficial geek reading my mind today, we see the Punisher with a katana. And at first I was like, that's really weird. And as I'm sitting there reading the page, I'm like, I wonder if the Punisher's ever teamed up with the Hand. That would be kind of interesting to see if the Punisher teams up with the Hand, because my brain is on Daredevil mode and I'm thinking about the Hand, Daredevil style. And then the next page hits and we find out Punisher is working with the Hand. And I'm like, damn, maybe I should write comics. But in all seriousness, the Punisher is teaming up with the Hand. And I think that it's kind of interesting, because we see that they are bringing him the worst of the worst. They're bringing him rapists and murderers and criminals. And basically saying that he should punish them. And again, my Punisher experience is extremely limited, but I thought the Punisher typically only killed criminals related to the mafia, and related to, gang violence. So for him to be killing like white collar criminals that are like rapists or people that get away with shit, I don't know. Is that up to his code? Is he allowed to do this? Please, somebody who has read more than Space Punisher, let me know, because I know nothing about the Punisher. Either way, I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't think I would read it ongoing in terms of single issues. However, I could definitely see myself picking up the trade. I feel like this is a very, very good series for new readers to jump onto. If you ever were interested in the Punisher or ever wanted to learn more about the Punisher, maybe you got off of watching Daredevil and watching Netflix's Punisher and wanted more Punisher, I think this is a really, really great starting point for any new reader, because it gives you exactly what you need to know and drops you into a new story. It felt different to me, who's actually held the comics most of these images come from. I enjoyed it. Okay, well, maybe I could see that. And I'm not necessarily saying I don't like a page like that, but I don't like when it's just a collage. Give me something artsy to work with. Jason Todd's my comic book boyfriend, but I'm totally distracted girlfriend with Frank Castle right now. Listen, when John Bernthal pops up on the screen, that's me too. Punisher, Civil War is a brilliant read. I might have to look into that. I've also been really interested. I know there's an arc where the Punisher gets the War Machine suit or one of the Iron Man suits. And I think that that's really hilarious that you're giving a cold-blooded killer possibly one of the greatest weapons on Earth. And I kind of just want to see what he does with that. So I might have to track down that arc. Bobby coming through the Punisher is working hand in hand with the Hand that he is. The Punisher's starting to sound like Wolverine to me when you mentioned the katana. This actually does give me the Wolverine vibes, in terms of that movie, because I know Logan has a lot where he goes over to Japan and he works with the samurai and he works with ninjas and, you know, kind of, kind of on the, kind of on the right basis there. So it wasn't bad. Was it my favorite book of the week? No. Did I hate it? No. Would I recommend it to somebody who's into this sort of vibe? Absolutely. Also new from Marvel Comics this week was Gwenverse #1. And listen, y'all, why y'all make me read this stuff? I mean, I know y'all physically don't make me read this stuff, but uh I feel obligated to read a lot of the new stuff that comes out, especially from the big two, so I can talk about it with y'all. And Gwenverse #1 was the most bloated, hand-fisted crap I've ever read, and it was not fun. I did not have a good time. I was not having a good time when this book was announced. I immediately was like, why is this book being announced? Because it makes no sense. Why are we doing a Gwenverse? It's very similar to the What If Miles Morales thing that we saw last week, where it's like, what are you giving to these characters? How are you developing these characters by just throwing them into the roles of other people? The entire time I was reading Gwenverse #1, because we do see her jump to multiple variants of herself. At one point, she jumps to a universe where she is Thor, and she is like Gwen Thor, I believe is what they call her, and it was just very, very weird, very jarring. The whole time I was reading this book, I'm like, why couldn't we just do this with Gwenpool, who is already a variant of Gwen Stacy? You could have done this book with Gwenpool. Gwenpool, listen, I used to hate Gwenpool. I really did not like Gwenpool. I was very much, why is this character around? Why has this character been created? But then after reading West Coast Avengers and seeing her interact with other characters, seeing her interact with Quentin Quire and with Hawkeye and America Chavez, I was like, this character is kind of fun when she's not being completely annoying when she's bouncing off of other characters. And I feel like if we had a book, because a book where a character jumps into multiple universes to experience different versions of themselves is an interesting concept if it's done with the right character. Gwenpool is that character. So it just doesn't make any sense. Banshee Queen, why are there so many Spider-Gwen #1s? It's because she is the hot new character from Marvel. They are overly inflating her. It is ridiculous. You are correct, officially unofficial geek. You have heard nothing about the Gwen comic this week. It is not very good. It is very bad. Why does this exist? Willis Henry hit that on the head. Overkill in Spider-Gwen. I agree very, very much onto this. So when I first started reading comics, I was only reading DC and indie, but I flat out refused to touch Marvel comics. I wanted nothing to do with Marvel. I did not want to read their books. But then Edge of Spider-Verse #2 came out and everybody was talking about it. So I read it, picked up a reprint, and I fell in love with the Spider-Gwen character. And she really was like that first character from Marvel that I was like, I'm interested in this character. I'm going to pick up your #1, read your series, enjoy it, and have a good time. But then we continuously saw Spider-Gwen get #1 after #1. She was appearing in all these other comics, and it felt like they overinflated her. And it honestly feels like a character like Spider-Gwen has run its course and probably should not exist anymore. And if she does still exist, maybe she should only pop up in a series every couple months or every couple years. But it kind of upsets me that a character like Spider-Gwen, who is new, has had more series than a character like Scarlet Witch. Listen, y'all, if I don't get a Scarlet Witch ongoing miniseries or whatever coming soon, I'm going to throw a fit. Okay, just give me a Scarlet Witch series. Let me be happy, and just let's do that. Just do that. So yeah, Spider-Gwen Gwenverse, not very good. Would not recommend this book to anybody. I would not even recommend this to somebody who is a huge Spider-Gwen fan. It adds absolutely nothing to the character. The story was a mess. I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. And it just was not very good. It was not very good. Yeah, it feels like she's been rebooted a dozen times. Like, I think she's had at least 3 or 4 number ones, and it's not fun. We are manifesting the Scarlet Witch series. We're manifesting right now. Please, please let me have a Scarlet Witch series. I have not read Darkhold Omega. I will read that tomorrow, today, after work, after this. I will read it. You've been bugging me for months now. I will read it. I'll read it right now. I'll do it on stream. Watch me. I'll do it. Prayer Circle for the Scarlet Witch comic. Yes, yes, please. Especially because I'm rereading Vision right now, and I just hit that issue that is focused on his relationship with Wanda. And now I'm getting ready to reread Trials of Magneto because it is the closest thing we have gotten to a Scarlet Witch series recently. Yeah, I need it. Omega is all about Scarlet. Okay. Well, it doesn't look it. Okay, it doesn't look it, so I didn't read it. So I will read it. And a Wanda series just makes sense. Like, this is the part of the show where Mars derails and we talk about Scarlet Witch because I have a goldfish brain and I'm obsessed. Wanda Maximoff right now is one of the biggest characters in terms of mainstream popularity. People already kind of liked her character in terms of the Avengers movies. Once WandaVision hit streaming services, she became the most talked about character. There were people that weren't even really into Marvel that were becoming obsessed with Wanda Maximoff and Scarlet Witch. Listen, I'm one of those people that once that show hits, my mind zeroed in and focused on Wanda Maximoff. And now she is my favorite, one of my favorite comic book characters, if not my favorite comic book character right now. Why Marvel has not capitalized on giving us a Scarlet Witch series honestly makes no sense. I would even be happy with Scarlet Witch and Vision series. It feels like all of these other characters have been getting series leading up to or post their series. Wanda Maximoff hasn't. So we gotta figure out something here. Another book we got this week was Captain Carter #1. This one was written by Jamie McKelvey. And it wasn't bad. I feel bad talking about series that I'm not like overly passionate and overexcited about, but this book really just kind of hit right where it needed to for me. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But I do feel like this book does have an audience for somebody. So in Captain Carter #1, we are in an alternate universe where Peggy Carter is Captain America. She is the individual who has received the super soldier serum. And again, this is like what I was talking about with Scarlet Witch. Listen, Captain Carter was big in the What If series that we saw on Disney Plus this year or last year. Now she has her own series. Where is my Scarlet Witch series? So anyway, this book takes place in our modern time, and it basically follows the events of Captain Carter after she is frozen or, thawed out from the ice. And I really, really liked that fact because you could have easily started this book off with, here's her origin story. Here's basically Captain America, the movie, but with Peggy Carter replaced, which is basically what we saw with What If episode 1, which featured Peggy Carter as Captain America. So I really like the idea that we kind of got to jump right into her just into modern times, how she was coping with it. Because while I don't read Captain America, I'm assuming that we really don't get to see that aspect of his character a whole lot because he has been around forever, because technically he was thawed out in the ice years and years ago, so it wasn't really that big of a time jump, so there wasn't all this technology and all of this change going on. So I think doing that with Peggy Carter and kind of giving us that modernized take on the character was really interesting. Again, I don't think that this book was bad. I think that this book was very, very good if you are into the Captain America character, if you are into the Peggy Carter character. I personally am not a huge fan of Peggy Carter. I'm not a huge fan of her being Captain America. I like the idea of her being Captain America, but she's just not a character that connects with me. And that's fine. Because at the end of the day, there are thousands of characters and we're all going to have our favorite characters and we're all going to have characters that just kind of slide by. But if you're a fan of her character, definitely pick this book up. If you just want a nice little, fish out of water story, because it really is it's a fun little fish out of water story. I think this is a really great book for younger readers or maybe teenage readers. This is definitely a book that I would recommend to my niece because I know that she would really, really love it. I'm excited to see where this kind of goes, and as long as it doesn't overstay her welcome or overstay its welcome, and we don't see Captain Carter evolve into this sort of Spider-Gwen-esque character, I think that we could have a really good time with it. I think it's definitely really great timing for them to release this book with What If and now with, Multiverse of Madness, because we all know that she's going to show up in Multiverse. I'm pretty sure she's going to show up in Multiverse of Madness. You heard it here first. But I think it's really great timing on behalf of Marvel. And I think it's really, really interesting, too, that it feels like Marvel is leaning more into this multiverse thing right now. Because with Spider-Gwen Gwenverse, which I didn't mention, there is mention of the TVA. I do not know, because again, I'm not the Marvel shill. I know more about DC than I do about Marvel. That's why I need Jen here for balance. In Spider-Gwen Gwenverse, they mentioned the TVA. And my understanding is I thought the TVA was created for the Loki series. Please, if I am completely wrong on this, please correct me. But I thought it was kind of interesting, even if it wasn't created for the Loki show, that they are reintroducing and they're talking up the TVA. Then we're getting Captain Carter. We're getting other books that have to deal with the multiverse, like Miles Morales, like Gwenverse. So I kind of think it's interesting that right now Marvel is leaning heavy into those multiverse books. And it makes me excited for what's to come. The reason for no Scarlet Witch is because Marvel does not know what to do with her and do not want to piss anybody off, making her bad or good until after the new Doctor Strange movie. Listen, me and Jen talked about this last week. Can we just have a witch comic where we just have witches team up? I want to see Scarlet Witch. I want to see Clea. I want to see Agatha Harkness. Let's see Madeline Pryor show up. She's technically not a witch, but she's a demon. Let's see stuff. Also, everybody coming through telling me the TVA was in the comics. Thank you very much for that. But I still think either way, whether it's in the comics or not, I think it's very interesting that now we're talking a lot about the TVA and we're just throwing that term around. Officially Unofficial Geek. My sister was bummed when the Agent Carter series ended. I might pick it up for her birthday this month. If you have friends, family, whoever that are fans of the Agent Carter series, this is honestly a perfect thing for you to pick up for them. It's perfect. Something tells me Mars would be willing to write it for them for Marvel. Yes, please. If Marvel wants to put their trust in me, because we'll talk about that a little bit. I have some ideas for Scarlet Witch. I got a couple ideas. Let's see, what else do we have? I want to save that book for last. That's the big book to talk about. We're gonna rant about that book. So we're gonna talk about this one. Han Solo and Chewbacca #1 came out this week. I wasn't gonna read this book, but I've been on kind of a Star Wars kick lately. I really, really like Star Wars. Okay. When I'm not that comic girl, I am that Star Wars girl. I know more about Star Wars than anybody I know. It's kind of ridiculous. I used to want to major it in college and just talk Star Wars constantly and learn the language. And it's ridiculous. I love Star Wars, but I don't talk about it a whole lot. So I read Han Solo and Chewbacca #1 because I was hearing good things about it. And it wasn't bad. It's not my cup of tea because I'm not a huge Han Solo fan. I'm not a huge Chewbacca fan. I know, shame, but I'm not a huge Han Solo fan. And this is a book about Han Solo. It is set right before a couple months or a couple years before the events of A New Hope. So it's kind of interesting to see, him post-Solo, pre-A New Hope, and see him interacting with other characters. I really like this book in terms of playing up characters and places that we have seen and going into some of those memories of Han Solo and seeing things that we have seen with Han Solo. Very much like the Darth Vader series that we saw and are currently seeing from Greg Pak, which I absolutely love. Listen, that Darth Vader series from Greg Pak is probably the best fucking Star Wars comic, Darth Vader or otherwise, we have seen in recent years, at least in terms of that first and second arc. That book was great because it played a lot into previous moments that we've seen in the movies. It kind of attached what we see in the comics to the movies so everything can connect. And Han Solo is also doing that with a lot of the moments from Solo in particular, which, while I was not a big fan of the movie, I appreciate the callbacks to certain moments and scenes in that film. Not only that, but this book features Greedo. So we get to see more of that Greedo Han Solo relationship. We also get to go back to Corellia, which is really cool and somewhere where I didn't think we were going to see again. So I like this book and what it does for the character. I think this is going to be a very good Han Solo book. I don't know why it's called Han Solo and Chewbacca, because Chewbacca honestly only shows up for about 3 pages. This literally should have just been called a Han Solo book. However, I think for anybody who is a fan of the character, this is definitely going to be one of those books that you want to pick up. Officially Unofficial Geek says, my boyfriend is the greatest Star Wars fan I know. He is my main choice for any Star Wars trivia night. I agree. Your partner is fantastic. We talk all the time on Twitter about Star Wars. That would be the one person I would be afraid to go up against in a Star Wars trivia match. Listen, I would be terrified. We're just talking about Scarlet Witch today. It's fine. Is it bad that we all want an evil Wanda? Yeah, you ever just want to go crazy? You ever just want to go ape shit? Listen, Wanda Maximoff did nothing wrong, and I will continue to preach it. She did absolutely nothing wrong. She could burn my house down to the ground, and I would say thank you. Serge Henderson here in the chat. Hello. Hello to everybody in the chat. Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. So I have one book left to talk about, and it's kind of a big one. Maybe not as big as I'm making it out to be, but I'm kind of upset. So we got another anthology series from Marvel. We've been seeing Marvel do a lot of these anthology series lately. We've been seeing the Diversity anthology series and the Voices series where, they did a Black History Month. They did one for Asian Heritage. Now, March, we're seeing another Women in Marvel comic book. And it's an anthology series. And listen, if y'all were watching the show last year and were fans of the show last year, and we're tuning along for the ride, y'all know me and Jen hated the Women in Marvel anthology series last year. Absolutely hated it. Jen typically does not hate a lot of things, but she hated that book. I hated that book. It was just bad. And with this year, we're like, okay, maybe they learned their lesson, because it felt like a lot of people felt very similarly to how we did. No, Marvel's doing the same goddamn thing. It literally feels cut, copy, rinse, repeat, the same shenanery that we got last year. So with Women in Marvel, it is an anthology series written, illustrated, and covering women, female characters. It's not fun. It's not a good time, because very much like we saw last year, where it was women being feminists and girl power and blue, 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 blue. It's the same goddamn thing we saw. It was not good. It was not fun. Listen, if y'all want to give me a female-centric, female-led, female-created anthology series, that's great. Please do. I'll take 100. Just give me really good stories about female characters. That's all I ask for, is put a spotlight on some of these female characters and let's have a good time. So in this story, we follow a couple of different people. There's a Silver Sable story that, I'm going to be honest, I kind of got lost across because it's one of the final stories. And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't want to read anymore. There was a Squirrel Girl story. And listen, that's how you know your book is bad. That's how you know your book is bad, because if your Squirrel Girl story is bad, you fucked up somewhere, because I'm going to be honest with you, it's very hard to fuck up a character like Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl practically writes herself, okay? She is the most fun, most eccentric, most amazing character in the universe, and she writes herself, and you fucked it up because you made her an ultra feminist that just wasn't that fun and was not great to read. There was a Jessica Jones series where she saves a guy and his wife dies, but he lives. And listen, if you're trying to empower females, killing the wife so that way the male can have character development is not the way to do it. Not only that, but this character calls Jessica Jones, Jessica fucking Jones, a feminist superhero icon. How? Why? What? What were you thinking? Because it doesn't make any sense. However, I think the biggest fucking offender of this entire story is the first little mini series, mini story, or if you will, which was supposed to be about Scarlet Witch. However, Scarlet Witch only shows up about 3 pages in the whole goddamn book. And it just makes me really upset because it's the Scarlet Witch story follows this young girl who identifies as a witch, identifies as a Wiccan, practices Wicca. You can see in the background little stories, little books about Wiccanism and paganism. And listen, I too practice Wicca. I consider myself a low-key lazy pagan because sometimes I don't want to put in the work and the effort. However, I do identify myself as such. So a lot of what we were seeing in the background is a lot of things that I have in my own home or things that I have in my own collection. And I was like, okay, I see myself in this character. And, you can see her identifying with her friends and wanting to get more into this culture and more into this religion and learn more about it. And she wanted to be a witch. And it's kind of hinted at that one of the reasons why she wants to be a witch is because she lost her family and because she wants the power to bring back her family and to bring back what was lost from her. And at one point, she runs into Wanda Maximoff. And the whole time, my brain was like, this is actually a really great one-shot story for Wanda Maximoff, where she meets another witch that went through the same pain she went, that went through the same, awfulness that she went, and only wants to be able to make her own life better and wants to bring back what she lost and what she couldn't have. And we could possibly see this younger witch fall into the dark side and see Wanda Maximoff have to bring them back and, teach them to love themselves and realize that they're not alone in this battle and there's other ways to help heal themselves. But we don't get that at all. But it's standing right there for you. It's literally flat on the page, written out for you, but we don't get it. And instead, our resolution to this story is Wanda Maximoff shows up to this witch hangout and she introduces herself to this young girl's friends, and suddenly the story is over. Suddenly that pain is healed. And it doesn't make any sense to me. And it just makes me sad because, we were just talking a couple minutes ago about what a Scarlet Witch story could be. That Marvel doesn't know what they want to do with Scarlet Witch. But a story like that, where Wanda finds a very young witch who is troubled and misguided and going through some of the same emotions and some of the same experiences that herself did, and that she is now falling into that sort of role that we saw happen with Wanda Maximoff. And Wanda has to fix it. And Wanda sees the signs and, has this connective moment of, I was in your spot. I went through exactly what you did. The book writes itself. I would love to read that book. I would love to write that book. I want that book. And it makes me so sad because it was there. The foundations were there, but we didn't get it. So Women of Marvel, honestly, was just the same thing we saw last year. Officially Unofficial Geek popped in that, it's all tokenism in the name of feminism. And I agree. I think the thing that I like most about the Women of Marvel anthology, if I'm being honest, is we do get a forward from Gail Simone. We do get to see some little things from the editors. They talk about some of like the history of some of these female characters and, where some of the editors and some of the other creators, what landed with them in terms of these characters and how they resonate with them. But the stories themselves don't make any sense. The stories themselves are very bad and very terrible. And I just did not have a good time. It was not fun. Did not enjoy it at all. So that was everything that I read from this week. I know it's very weird to do this without Jen. It's very, very weird. I did pick up a couple things though that I kind of wanted to show off. And some things that I won't. We'll talk about that. So the first thing I wanted to show off is we got a Catwoman 39 reprint. Because that book sold out. It went to second printing. And it is a gorgeous cover by Sozumaki. So listen, I was complaining about this book last month because this gorgeous variant cover by Sozumaki was like a 1 in 25. And it was insane that an issue 39 was a 1 in 25. And I really wanted this cover, but I was not willing to pay the $50, $60, $70 that it was going for. And DC did what they needed to do. And they reprinted the same exact cover. The only difference is that, the background is purple instead of black. So if you're like me and you missed out on this cover and you really, really wanted this cover, it is $3.99 at your local comic book shop. So ask your shop to order it for you. I kind of hope that they do it with the rest of the variants because I feel like Sozamika, I feel like not enough people are talking about her artwork. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like she's going to be the next Peach Momoko. I really do think she's going to be the next Peach Momoko because her covers are beautiful and gorgeous and just wonderful. The other thing I picked up was a Kickstarter that finally came in. I forgot that I kickstarted this last year, and actually I have another Kickstarter that's on the way. This is The Gardener by Matthew Emmons and Bernard Bryce, and I'm really, really excited to read this. So it's basically like this little robot in this post-apocalyptic world who, is trying to find himself and trying to find his purpose in life, and so he's gardening. And I love shit like this. And it's a big boy. Like, this book is very, very thick. It's hardcover. It's gorgeous. It was definitely well worth the money that I paid for it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I will keep you guys updated on if it is good or not. I hope it is good because I've kickstarted a couple things recently and they have not been very good. So I feel like this needs to break my bad Kickstarter streak. I don't know if you're able to purchase this outside of the Kickstarter. I want to think that you can because it does have secondbest.com, which is the publisher. And it does have a price point on here of $54.99. So you may be able to purchase it outside of the Kickstarter. I'm not entirely sure though. Sleepy Reader 666 says, I got The Gardener too. Looking forward to reading it as well. Listen, let me tell you all something. I could have swore me and Jen kickstarted this together. I could have swore we talked about it last year when it first debuted, that we both loved it and we're going to kickstart it. Let me tell you, I talked to her the other day and she's like, I did not kickstart this book and now I'm upset. And now I'm upset because I want her to read it with me. So Sleepy Reader 666, you'll have to buddy read it with me. And we'll have to talk about it. So I'm really, really excited about that. But that is everything that I have. I mentioned at the very beginning that yesterday I went to a very small convention that's just held in my hometown, and it was in one of the high school gymnasiums. So it always kind of feels more like a garage sale or a flea market, but I really, really enjoyed it. I had a really, really good time. Picked up a lot of stuff. Picked up some stuff that I've been looking for a while. Some things I was able to get some really good deals on. Listen, I'm not gonna spoil it because I plan on doing a video to show you guys. I picked up some incentive variants for like $5 rather than paying like $20, $30, $40 for them. So I'm really, really excited about that. I also picked up one of my comic book grails. It's a first appearance that I have been looking for and I've been dying to find. And I found one of my comic book grails for very, very cheap. So I'm very, very excited about that and some other fun stuff. So I fully plan on filming that video. It's probably going to be the first video in the new studio. So I'm really, really excited. But I plan on filming a new video. Basically doing a back issue haul. So stay tuned for that. But we're almost at the 2-hour mark. We're not quite at the 2-hour mark. I'm actually surprised I talked as long as I did. I thought we were only going to make it to like an hour, but we made it to about an hour and a half. I think we are going to end things here. I do want to thank everybody for just being absolutely wonderful and supportive. There were people in and out of the chat all day, people hanging out in the comments. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Listen, I still got the shakes and the heebie-jeebies from doing this by myself. It feels very weird to do this without Jen. But I definitely wanted to be here with you guys today because this week was fantastic for comics. Maybe not fantastic, but there was a lot of stuff to talk about. So I wanted to be here for that. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you guys have a wonderful Sunday. And hopefully, pretty sure we should both be back next week. So thank you again so much for being here. I will catch you next week for another episode of Casually Comics.